The first sign that my so-called peaceful retirement in the Tennessee hills was about to turn into a full-blown war was a glossy black sign at the entrance to my road that basically said I wasn't allowed to go home. Yeah, that happened. And the funny part? I had been living there for exactly 48 hours. Now, let me back up a sec, because none of this makes sense unless you understand how I got there in the first place. For 12 years, I worked as a federal civil rights attorney. Most of my cases involved housing discrimination, zoning abuse, and, believe it or not, HOAs that got a little too comfortable acting like miniature governments. I spent more time in courtrooms arguing with people who thought neighborhood bylaws outranked the Constitution than I care to remember. Eventually, I burned out. No wife, no kids, just a pension and a headache from a decade of legal warfare, so I did the obvious thing. I bought a house in the mountains of Tennessee, paid cash, $850,000 straight out of my savings, and told myself the rest of my life would involve strong coffee, woodworking in the garage, and absolutely zero litigation. The place was perfect. 3,000 square feet of clean lines and quiet forest air, tucked at the edge of a ridge in a little cul-de-sac called Lakewood Ridge. I had checked everything before wiring the money. Title search, zoning maps, development history. Most importantly, I had written documentation from the original developer stating that my parcel had been carved out of the larger subdivision years before the HOA was ever formed. In other words, no HOA. Trust me, after 12 years fighting them, that was the first thing I verified. So imagine my surprise when I came back from a quick trip to Virginia, just grabbing the rest of my belongings, and saw that brand new sign at the entrance to the road. Private community. HOA members only. Trespassers will be prosecuted. I sat there in my truck staring at it for a full minute, wondering if somebody was filming a prank show. But no, the sign was very real, and it was planted directly in front of the only road leading to my driveway. The next morning I was on my porch adjusting a screen door hinge when a white Lexus SUV rolled halfway onto the pavement. Out stepped a woman who looked exactly like the casting director for a suburban villain had done their job perfectly. Mid-50s. Linen blazer sharp enough to cut glass. An iPad tucked under her arm like sacred scripture. She walked straight up the driveway and stopped 5 feet from me. "Mr. Gray, I presume?" Her voice had that crisp, sour tone that people use when they've already decided they're in charge of your life. "That's me," I said. "I'm Karen Milbrook," she replied, president of the Lakewood Preserve Homeowners Association. Of course she was. She pulled out a stapled packet and tapped it neatly against her tablet. "I'm here to deliver your onboarding materials and discuss your outstanding dues." "My what?" She spoke slowly, like explaining gravity to a toddler. "As a resident within the expanded jurisdiction of Lakewood Preserve, you are required to join the HOA, remit an initiation fee of $12,000, and begin monthly payments of $375. I blinked. "That's going to be a problem." Her smile froze. "My property isn't part of your HOA," I said calmly. "It never was." Karen's jaw tightened just slightly. "That may have been true years ago," she said. "But the board voted to expand our jurisdiction for community protection." I leaned against the railing and nodded slowly. "Well, that's interesting," I said, "because I have a deed, zoning confirmation, a notarized exemption from the developer, and a title search that says otherwise." Her eyes narrowed. "We're prepared to pursue legal enforcement if you continue resisting." I took the packet from her hand without even opening it. "Karen," I said, "I'm not joining your HOA. I'm not paying $12,000. And I'm definitely not repainting my house driftwood beige because your committee thinks it's calming." Her nostrils flared. "Then prepare for the consequences." I smiled. "So do I." She spun around, marched back to her Lexus, and drove away like she was late to a villain convention. At the time, I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning I woke up to the sound of diesel engines and metal clanging outside my house. When I stepped out onto the driveway, it looked like a construction site. 2 skid-steer loaders were dumping crushed limestone across the only road leading to my property. Workers in reflective vests were shoveling gravel into a neat little mountain right at the entrance to the cul-de-sac. A sign hung from a sawhorse. "Road closed, authorized vehicles only." I walked over to the foreman. "You have a permit for this?" He shrugged. "HOA hired us," he said. "Said this was community maintenance." So I stepped aside, took photos, and made 2 phone calls. First, the county roads department. No permit. No closure authorization. Second call, police non-emergency. A deputy named Martinez arrived about 20 minutes later. Nice guy, clearly regretting his life choices the moment he saw the gravel blockade. They say the road belongs to the HOA, he told me carefully. That's funny, I replied, holding up my deed. Because it doesn't. He sighed and filed a report, but by the afternoon the construction crew packed up and left. The gravel stayed. So did the sign. Then I walked inside to make coffee and discovered something interesting. The faucet didn't work. Neither did the power. Someone had shut off my water and electricity. Turns out both utility companies had received termination orders authorized by the Lakewood Preserve HOA, with a signature that wasn't mine. Not even close. They'd signed it T. Grant, which would have been impressive if my name weren't Tyler Gray. That was the moment I realized something important. This wasn't petty HOA nonsense. This was fraud. 3 days later the HOA filed a lawsuit accusing me of trespassing in my own house. 74 pages of legal nonsense demanding initiation fees, penalties, and damages for lowering community harmony. I didn't get angry. I poured coffee, opened my laptop, and started building a case file. Then something unexpected happened. A guy named Jason knocked on my door. Tall, military posture, veteran's cap. He introduced himself quietly. I used to be on the HOA board, he said. Then he slid a photocopied memo across the counter. The header read, Strategic Expansion Agenda. And one bullet point jumped out at me. Acquire non-member parcels through enforcement pressure. Target holdout properties. I looked up slowly. You're telling me they planned this? Jason nodded. Karen doesn't like people outside her control. That memo changed everything. Because now I wasn't dealing with an overreaching HOA. I was looking at a coordinated scheme. Then the real twist hit. When I dug into the annexation paperwork, the signature approving my property's inclusion came from someone named Leonard Huffman. There was just one problem. That person had never owned my property. They had invented a fake previous owner to justify the annexation. That's when I called an old colleague, Emily Cho, a land use attorney in Nashville. She reviewed the documents and laughed. Tyler, she said, this isn't zoning abuse. What is it? Racketeering. You know that moment in movies where someone loads the last round into the chamber? Yeah, that was the moment. We filed a federal lawsuit. Fraud. Conspiracy. Property coercion. And if the pattern held? RICO. Once the case hit the news, the whole thing exploded. More homeowners came forward. An elderly man named Gerald had paid $28,000 in fake beautification fees under threat of foreclosure. Another homeowner had been fined for planting vegetables. Emails leaked. Internal spreadsheets surfaced listing holdout targets. My name was right there at the top. Karen responded the way people like Karen always do. By escalating. My tires got slashed. My mailbox knocked over. Someone spray-painted snitch across my garage door. But every camera was rolling. Every threat documented. Then the judge granted a restraining order. And the dominoes started falling. The county raided the HOA office. Internal chat logs surfaced showing Karen coordinating harassment. The zoning official who approved the annexation confessed he'd been bribed with consulting payments. Federal investigators opened a RICO case. And Karen Milbrook vanished. Skipped the state. Eventually they tracked her last location to Costa Rica, hiding under the name Susan Clearwater. Interpol issued a notice. The HOA collapsed. The court dissolved it entirely and ordered restitution for every homeowner they had extorted. Gerald cried when he got his check back. The county rewrote its annexation laws. They even named the policy after me, which honestly still feels weird. 3 months later my water finally came back on. That night I sat on the porch with a glass of bourbon, listening to the cicadas humming through the trees, and for the first time since moving there everything was quiet. Peaceful. The way I thought retirement was supposed to be. I did hang one new sign at the end of my driveway though. Simple carved wood. 4 words. This is my land. And these days I run a small nonprofit helping homeowners fight abusive HOAs. Turns out Karen wasn't the only one pulling scams like that. Not even close. So let me ask you something. If someone tried to take your home through lies, intimidation, and fake authority, would you fight them in court? Or would you sign the paper just to make the problem disappear? Because a lot of people signed. I just happened to be the one neighbor Karen Milbrook picked, who knew exactly how to fight back. And if you've ever dealt with a nightmare HOA, I'd genuinely love to hear your story. Drop it in the comments, because trust me, The only reason bullies like that survive is when everyone else stays quiet.